and then we will begin. So, very much welcome all. A little bit more than 2 hours, we will be talking about making music collections public with the communities. And the project is called ICH North, Passing On Our Musical Heritage. It's an Interreg project with many different work packages that work with traditional music, intangible cultural heritage, and then on transmission of heritage. And with this work package, we work with especially with archives, music collections, museums, and this is the part of the webinar series that we are having in the work package. I have few slides about the topics and themes of our work package. So we have three different themes. First one is ownership. How are the communities involved in defining the principles of use of collections, music collections, and what different kind of methods like traditional knowledge labels there are. And we had already a webinar on this topic about the ownership. And then the other level is community involvement in documentation. So when we do actually collecting the new material or documenting, are we including the communities in the decision-making processes? And this one also, we had a webinar on this, and now we are working with the third level, which is the dissemination. So when we are using the archive material or the music collections that we have collected, maybe making CDs or publishing music or making open access platforms, are we taking the communities into account in that situation? And our project or the work package works on these three levels, and we have these webinars. And then we have expert meetings with different museums or archives. So if you're interested about hearing more about the work package or the results that we have gathered so far, feel free to contact us so that we can also organize a workshop for you. So we have these expert workshops, but also we are having, we have practitioner workshops during the project, so that we go to the communities, go to the practitioners and ask when there is a music collection from their community, we go to the practitioners and ask, is it okay that the archive has it? Is it okay that archive does this and this work with it? And how would the community think would be important to take into consideration when working with the collections? And how to participate? Of course, the webinars and then workshops, as I mentioned. We also have a survey, and then there is a newsletter for the whole project. And here is the QR code for the survey. So if you see it, for example, in the video, it will be easier for you to go. But actually, this was my short pre-presentation. And then I will present the people from our work package, which is Outi, Valo, my colleague from the Finnish Folk Music Institute.
Hello. Hello.
And then Bengt, Wittgren from from Sweden, and you will introduce your own organization in just a while. My name is Matti Hakamäki, so I'm director of Finnish Folk Music Institute, and we are a small organization in Finland, working with the archives, also a lot with practitioners, traditional music, but also with UNESCO. We are accredited to the 2003 convention, so we are very active in the international level also. But very much welcome to all. I think we will have a very interesting afternoon. And then please, Bengt, if you can tell a few words about your organization and also about especially about your archive collection, what you have
Thank you.
inside your walls.
Yes, thank you. Västernorrland County Museum is an open museum. It's a museum with cultural history collections of ordinary type, but we have also quite, for a regional museum, huge music collections. It started regarding collections in the 1910s. It was music was a way in Sweden to collect, to write down tunes, folk music for safety and print, to have fillers and other musicians to take the music out again and to give it live. But then we have some sort of, when he died, it stopped. That started again in the 80s when we got a music curator who took care of recording on tapes, but also to collect what people have home of music cassettes of different types of recordings. But the focus was on folk music, I would say, and popular music in some ways. Music performed in the region. But we have more or less 3 interesting collections that people of different kinds use, and recording ownership and all that. There is, of course, the recordings from the 18th, 17th, and 19th that could be of course interest for many music groups and students and all that. But also a collection of music given to the new gymnasium in Härnösand, 1782. It's about 900 autographs or manuscripts from all over Europe at the time. And the interest to that collection is, of course, mostly music professors around Europe and other scientists who want to see how they have, that part. And we have a collection of the phonograph cylinders, about 40. And that is, of course, interesting for many researchers and, of course, musicians who want to listen how it sound. Yeah, that's sweet. That's
Thank
awesome.
Thank you, Bengt. And then Outi, please.
Yes, hello everyone, and I'm so happy that you found your way here in this webinar. And so I will tell shortly about our archive also, that because we are also part of the project. And so our archive is rather a young one. So we were established in 1974. So also the archive collections that we have are rather young, but we are still making the documentation work every summer, actually almost 100 hours per summer. And also thinking about a lot of these issues that how the sea, for example, that we are hearing also today about these archival caps and these kind of issues that we are like trying to see in our work, that we don't do too many in the way top-down decisions in our archival work. And for example, we record every summer one particular stage during the Kaustinen Folk Music Festival, that we record all the program in the stage, not making decisions that what we actually think that should be recorded or not should be recorded. And but now we are very keen to hear today about your ideas and examples of this kind of community involvement, because we also think that we could also test many of the ideas in our daily work as well, and that would be really interesting.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I won't go through the program so that we can go on. You have seen it all, I'm sure, and you will see it just following the webinar. But first, I will ask Esbjörn Wettermark from University of Sheffield. You have promised to give us a presentation. Please, floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm just going to set up the sharing here. We just practiced this just before. Now, have you made any changes to the settings? Because I can no longer choose optimize for video sharing here.
No.
This is even when you practice beforehand.
Do you see things that have changed, or?
Well, I were able to tick when I shared a tick optimize for video sharing before, but that is not an option anymore. Well, I'll try anyway and see.
Could it be because of the recording? Because I'm now recording.
It could be for the recording. Okay, well in that case, maybe we can just at the end, because the film is at the end, we could try that then. But let's just get going now. Yeah. So let's see. Sorry, to some reason it's. There we go. Can you all see that now?
Very good.
Yeah.
Good. Sorry, I just need to get rid of all these controls. There we go. Okay, so thank you so much for having me. I'm going to talk in this presentation about an archive resource that has come out of a project called Gypsy and Traveller Voices in Music Archives. So this project and this resource is very much a collaborative project, and although I present here by myself today, I would like to acknowledge my collaborators, Professor Hazel March and Library Director Tiffany Hoare, who has also been involved in creating this presentation. Sorry, it's going to find the right buttons down here somewhere. Oh, there we go. So this project, community-focused resource called Singers and Song, came about due to Hazel and myself independently started to question the prevalence of Romany, Gypsy and Traveller song repertoire within the English folk scene and the absence of people from these very groups working in the same scene. So in 2022, we worked together with the Access Folk project, me as a research associate and Hazel as one of the project's board members. And we decided to get in touch with the Vaughan Williams Memorial Library to initiate a project working with their collections of Romany Traveller repertoire. So the Vaughan Williams Memorial Library is England's national folk music and dance archive, library and archive. They have bit of both. They're based in Cecil Sharp House in Camden, and it's owned and run by the English Folk Dance and Song Society. So I know Tiffany Hoare, the library director there, and the collections in the library quite well due to many years engagement with both the library and the society, and they were very keen to be involved when we contacted them. So sorry, I went a bit too quick there. There we go. So my way into this subject is as a musician and as a researcher who has worked within the English folk scene. And I have no personal connections or family connections to Romany or Traveller people. Hazel, she is from an English Romany background, and she's a scholar who used participatory and arts-based methods to champion voices of indigenous groups in South America, where she's done most of her work, but also with Romany traveller people in the UK. So before we move to the actual resource, I need to give a bit of context because there's terms and things that change between countries and it might need some definition. So in this presentation, I am talking about Roman Gypsy, Irish and Scottish travellers, groups who have a very long presence in Great Britain and Ireland. And Romani Gypsy people, I sometimes just use the word Romani. Some people prefer the term Gypsy. If you go to the US, for example, Gypsy is generally considered a slur and is not used. So you have to be careful with these terms. But Romani Gypsy people in the UK migrated from India into Europe in the Middle Ages and reached Great Britain and Ireland in the early 16th century. Irish and some Scottish traveller groups on the other side represent indigenous nomadic ethnic groups with a continuous presence in Great Britain and Ireland. And quite often groups are moved across this archipelago. So although there are social connections between many Romani Gypsy and traveller groups, they have distinct culture and they are not of the same ethnicity, and this is very important. And in this context, in the UK context, the word Roma, that is Romani people from Eastern Europe, refers to more recent arrival on the Isles with different music and cultural traditions. So what is community here? This whole talk is about community, and I think it's when we talk about the Romanis and travellers in the context of the UK, the word community can be quite sensitive. So the UK government used an acronym called the Gypsy Roma Traveller, GRT, and it's often used in ways to create misunderstandings. For example, sometimes you see a document that says the GRT community, whereas, as I explained just now, this is not one community. These are distinct, mostly unrelated groups of people. And even within these groups, there's no single unifying community. It's a bit like saying, oh, the English community, it's too big. You can't use that word in this context, but it's nevertheless done a lot. There are national Romani travel organizations who support the community in various ways. However, they are not endorsed by all stakeholders within these groups as well. So there's a complicated thing when you're trying to reach this elusive community. The Travelers' Times, a magazine, a newspaper magazine, you can say, have written a resource for people who write about their groups, and they point out that the word community imposes a false perception of conformity and sometimes even implies a collective responsibility that does not exist in real life. So for these reasons, when Hazel, Tiffany and I have been working, we have been very aware that we couldn't simply claim community engagement, but we had to make a call on who we work with and why. So the context there, with the English context in particular, so the project was quite focused on England, but some of these things also relate to the situation in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. But Folk Song Collector in the UK or in England early on recognized that Romani traveller groups sang many songs and ballads, mostly English language songs and ballads, that had gone out of fashion among other groups in society. And this led to a fascination with Romani travellers in the English folk scenes. And I have sometimes summed this up by the words, the songs but not the people. It's a great fascination of these groups as resources for songs that can be sung by people who are not Romanis and travellers. Recordings of Romani traveller singers, including singers such as the Irish traveller singer Mary Delaney, multiple members of the Smiths and Willett families, those are Romani families, have had an important impact on the contemporary folk song repertoires through field recordings and publications. Ewan McCall and Peggy Seeger, Peter Kennedy and many others in the 60s folk revival promoted Romani traveller song repertoires, while often, and sometimes unintentionally, reiterated prejudices and misconceptions of the people themselves. So, and as I mentioned, nevertheless, the prevalence of these repertoires and the songs and the mentions of these Romani singers there are actually very few people from Romany traveller heritage who are engaged in the contemporary folk scene in England. So the 1 Million Memorial Library has significant holdings of songs collected from Romany traveller people from the 1800s into the 2000s, and they reach from recordings, very early wax cylinders, to commercial productions. There is something in England called the Roud Index, which is a big catalogue of song titles, and this is also connected and linked to recordings through this. So you can search digitized recordings of singers through the Roud Index on the 1 Million Memorial Library. We also have a lot of originals and copies of manuscripts from collectors such as Sharp and others from the first revival. However, there's no kind of unifying way of searching for the Romany and traveller material itself. It's hard, and if you don't know it's there, if you don't know what names to look for, you can't really find it. So, yes, I'm going to say, if you want to learn more about the specific context in England and the catalogue issues and things like that, there's this article Hazel, Tiffany, and I wrote last year. It's freely available online, and it's a peer-reviewed academic article that kind of digs into this a bit more. But now, I would like to talk about the archive resource we created. So the Singer and Songs, Gypsy and Traveller Voices, was a resource that was funded by the University of East Anglia through something called an Impact Acceleration Scheme by the Arts and Humanities Research Council in the UK. So the aim of that is to try to make research more accessible in different ways, of findings in different ways. And the aim of it was to make it easier for Romany travel people themselves to find materials about their relatives and contribution of these groups to folk music in England. So the focus was not on people who were already engaged with folk music or academics, but people who had some kind of family connection or social connection that was important. So we decided that we didn't want to write this resource ourselves. We wanted an open recruitment process for someone with lived or other significant experience of Romany traveller culture. And this wording, lived or significant experience, was something we had to choose because we had to be careful not to break any laws around recruitment based on ethnicity. If we had gone out and said, you can only apply for this job if you are from a Romany or traveller background, we would break the law as it's in the UK. So we made a very careful thought about how we wrote our recruitment documents, and then we had to think about where to advertise. So as you might be aware from your own context, quite often organizations has rules of where they advertise for jobs or recruitment. And the problem, if you talk about an arts organizations or university, the places where they advertise is not necessarily where a lot of people who are from Romany and traveller backgrounds might look for work or look for opportunities. So we had to kind of be quite savvy with this and think about, okay, how do we reach people? We used a lot of social media. We made sure to tag and ask people from these groups to share within their networks. And in the end, we had quite a good turnout and quite a diverse group of people who applied to do this commission. And we wanted it to be a commission. We wanted to give somebody a chunk of money, guidance, support, and look in the archive and decide what kind of resource do they think from their experience would be useful to reach people related or connected with them. So it wasn't a project employment where we had said you're going to work for X amount of hours or you're going to work for X amount of days. We wanted this to be a commission of an output. And that also made a question, what is a reasonable payment here? We went back and forth with this quite a lot. A lot of people were used to get hourly payments, which didn't really work very well in something like this. So we looked at how the English Folk Dance and Song Society and the library have paid for previous resources and made a choice that we can't pay significantly more than they usually pay, but it had to be kind of reasonable in relation to what it was. And we want a significant freedom for the person recruited to decide the structure and focus of the resource. So we set up these parameters, and then the person who we recruited got to make their own choices on what they wanted to focus on. So in the end, we commissioned the Romany poet, Dr. Joe Clement, who is working at Northumbria University, to create this resource, supported by the library and academic team, which is myself and Hazel. And we also had a small focus group made up of Romany and Irish traveller people who had a personal interest in music and the project itself. So they also we could go back to them at certain points in the project, show what Joe had been working on, and they gave feedback how they thought this could work and how they might want to use it in their social context. And after the publication, we worked with a traveller-led arts and crafts fair in Norfolk to present the project to new people from a range of backgrounds, not only Romany traveller people, but quite a lot of people from those groups as well. So some decisions that came out here. So Joe was quite fascinated by these evocative photographs of Romany singers that were in the archives and the stories associated with them, the descriptions by the collectors of their experience of talking to these people who Joe felt a connection to. And there was a realization from all of us that the collectors' accounts needed editing. Some of it was blatantly racist in different ways. Some of it was probably exoticizing a few times. You could really feel like, oh, well, this singer is playing him, you know. They are saying things that he expected to hear and things like that. So we did quite a lot of work of editing down these stories into kind of bite-sized things that would be useful, but wouldn't kind of reiterate prejudices and things like that. So most of these pictures, they don't come with recordings. So there's pictures of people from the 1905s to 1910s. Only one person really are recorded on the pictures. We wanted to connect these older photographs with recordings made in the 60s and 70s, which are digitized and can be accessed through the website. But as I said, quite difficult to find if you don't know they are there. And we had to think also about how could a resource be used and in what context. And this came down to the importance of how the layout and the visual appeal of the project should kind of talk to these groups. And Joe is a publisher and very experienced in presenting materials. So thanks to her, we managed to create a really kind of user-friendly resource. So this is the front page of the resource and a little bit of an how-to guide. So we see we introduced symbols that can be clicked. So this is for the kind of electronic PDF version of it. We did a version that can be printed that has QR codes instead of these links. So you can have it in front of you and you can use your phone and you can scan it and you can then listen to it while you read the actual resource. This was something that some of the older people in the focus group mentioned that this was a great way for them to connect with their grandchildren and children who used mobile phones, so they can scan that and then they can talk and listen together. This is a typical spread here, Lucy Carter, a little bit about her, quote from one of her songs. You click there, you get the original transcript, a little bit about that song, and then down in the other corner, you can click and hear another Romany singer, Caroline Hughes, singing a song on a similar theme. Yeah. So beyond this resource that was published in 2023, we have written a peer-reviewed article. We have written more a public fronting article for the conversation in relation to Gypsy Roma Traveller History Month. We have created an inventory of Romany traveller singers named in the One Williams Memorial Archive catalogue, which means it will be easier for people who now visit archives to actually find these people. We have worked quite a lot with the Irish traveller singer Thomas McCarthy and done film screenings about him and also staged conversation between him and Hazel in various places in Norwich. And the last year we have been working with a Romany filmmaker, Lisa Smith, who has created a short film which follows a great-granddaughter of the Romany singer and activist Minty Smith, who was recorded multiple times in the 60s and 70s and became kind of an important source of repertoire for the English folk scene, she and her brothers and partner. So this film follows Liza's journey to the Vaughan Williams Memorial Library to explore how singers from her family have had an impact on folk music in England. So that was my presentation. I'm now going to show you a little bit of this film. So I would like just to ask you to pause or turn off the recording because I'm not allowed to.
And I will start again. So thank you very much, Esbjörn. We will go on hear about another project, Bhreathnach and Aoife Nilira and Dublin City University. The floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much. Can you see the slideshow?
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay, great. My name's Bhreathnach and my colleague Aoife is here. I'm working and have been working for some years now in Dublin City University as a lecturer and various other things. Among the things I'm working on is the Dúchas, which is the National Folklore Collection digitisation project. I've been working on that for some years now, and Aoife is a PhD student, is working with us in one aspect of that. So we're going to split the talk. I'm going to talk about some ways in which we share the folklore collections and some ways in which we make them public, music as part of that. And then Aoife is going to give a lot more information about her work and what she does with what she's doing in her PhD research. So we work in Dublin City University. You may know of the National Folklore Collection, which is housed in University College Dublin, which is on the other side of the river. We're north, they're south. And they house this wonderful National Folklore Collection, which is part of the UNESCO Memory of the World Register since 2017. We've been working with them since 2012 to digitise that material and make it available online. In this project, which we call Dúchas. Dúchas means heritage in the Irish language, and that's what the website is called, duchas.ie. And it comprises various collections, all made as available as possible and as openly as possible and in as friendly a fashion as possible. We're not archivists as such. Of course, this material is archived as well, but what we're worried about is making it available and putting it into people's hands. And this is all done, obviously, with public money, so we're very much concerned about that. In Dúchas, we have various collections. There's the Schools Collection, which was a collection made in the 1930s from school children in Ireland, very comprehensive and very popular. There's the Photographic Collection, the Audio Collection, which has a massive amount of material, which is gradually being digitised and made available online, including 1,700 songs, of which there are at least 2 Finnish entries, which we found the other day. So here they are, and I might put this in the chat, and if anyone can tell me what they are, we'd be very grateful. It's Laments for the Dead, and so they've material. There's various other material in other languages, but most of it is in, as you would expect, the Irish language and in English, so that's all available there. And then there's the main manuscript collection, which is a collection that was done since the 1930s by collectors employed by the Folklore Commission at the time, who went out with an Ediphone and collected material from people and then transcribed it. So there's a lot of overlap between the audio and the main manuscript collection. As part of that collection, there's an awful lot of material which has nothing to do with music, but there are about 1,700 songs already available online and plenty more to come. So, as I said, there's about 2,500 volumes in the main manuscript collection, about 700,000 pages, which we are gradually digitising and making available. We're a third of the way there, nearly, and we've about 700 volumes are available now online. It's transcriptions of material, diaries, questionnaires. It's all indexed by tale type, by language, by speaker, by place, various indexes and so on, and by item type as well, which is correspondence, lore, questionnaires and songs, so that it can be searched relatively easily. And then we're going to talk a wee bit about how people use this material. So Dúchas has been online for, I suppose, 12 or 13 years now. It's massively popular. In May this month so far, and we're not even halfway through it, there have been 25,000 visits to the site. So it's really become a massive community resource and massively used by the people of Ireland and further afield. Mainly, I would say, because of the schools collection, because this is material that was collected by people's grandparents, by people's great grandparents, and they can go back and look at it, and people find that very touching, and I think people find it's very close to people's hearts. But also the audio collection, the photographic collection, it's very much used as a source for research, but also the source for education. And it's used in kind of family history, I would say, as well. There's a huge amount of family history research done based on this. So it's very much a public resource. It's very much referred to in public discourse, and you hear it mentioned on radio. You see it mentioned in the papers and so on regularly, which is great. We get a lot of correspondence as well. We get all sorts of emails from all sorts of people, and all sorts of material and other social media as well. I've put 3 examples of the sort of emails we get regularly. One of them being from artists. You know, I've created drawings based on this. Please find them. I want to get permission to do this or to publish this. We get emails from local history groups. They want to publish books. We get emails from people who want to use the material in music and in other things as well. We get emails from people who have various aches and pains, looking for cures. We can't usually, unfortunately, help them. But so the likes of this, I was looking for holy water from the well, and I can't find it. Can you help me? You know, so we get questions like that as well, because there's a huge. This material is very close to the surface, I think, for a lot of Irish people, and it's this feeling of folk cures and so on. It's not something that's gone away. So this is a sort of a digital version of that, if you like. And then we get things like, hi, I was wondering, could you send me an email of my grandmother writing so I can print it off for my mother? And a lot of things there, the connection with people's families. People want to get a copy of what their own grandparents or great grandparents wrote when they were children, and that's very, very important for people. So this is very much linked to people personally, and people take it very personally, I think, which is great. Other ways in which we engage with the community, arts and heritage. So here are 2 examples of things that have been published based on the National Folklore Collection. So a book published a year or 2 ago by a broadcaster, John Creedon, which is basically a selection of stories from the collection. And then something done by the artist Alan Dunn, who drew drawings based on remedies and cures taken from the collection. So again, and there are many more examples of this, of people taking this material and making it their own in various ways, and in music just as much as in other things as well. Other things, this is something we've done in the last 10 years, which has really drawn people in, which is what we call mehel Dúchas. Mehel is an Irish word which means a group of people who come together, typically to save a harvest, or to build a house, or to gather turf. So it's a group of people working together with one common purpose. So mehel Dúchas has been a community transcription project where we've asked people to transcribe the material that's available online, and to make it available for other people in that way. And we put this up as something of an experiment in 2015, just to see what would happen. Could we save some work for ourselves? Could we make things a bit more searchable? And it's been massively successful, in that the entire school's collection, so nearly 500,000 pages, was transcribed by a community of users that we didn't really know who they were. We did a certain amount of advertising, and then it went off on its own. It did its own thing, and people became really engaged with it and really got really into it. I think having a global pandemic and having everyone stuck at home and a bit bored probably helped, because a huge amount of work was done during COVID. And so that's been really successful, really positive, and it's been a really good way to get people involved. So we know that universities have used it, for example, to get students to transcribe material, folklore students or Irish language students to transcribe material. This is a really good way of studying material by engaging with it firsthand yourself and looking at it. As well as that, we've noticed something interesting about this was that this is how it works. So you can look at the material is there and you can just copy it into a box. It's really, really simple. All you do is copy it out. There's nothing to stop you being able to do it. There's no reason anyone couldn't do it. We noticed one thing when we were doing this, that there was about 9,000 people had registered. Most people do a page or two and then get bored and go away. Some people get really, really, really into this and do massive amounts of transcription. So the most prolific 2% of members transcribed 3/4 of the pages. Some people transcribed 1,000 pages or more, which is really a lot of work, as you probably know from working with handwriting. And the 10 most prolific transcribers, the top 10, transcribed 217,000 pages between them. So this is really a full-time job for people like that. And again, it was done anonymously, or almost anonymously. It's done with very little input from us, apart from answering emails. So it's really very interesting to see how that happened. We did a little survey of people a year or two ago, asking them why they were doing this. And we got various responses. Here, a few examples: people saying it was fun, people rationing their own uploads, don't want to go too far with it, and just doing 1 page a day just to stop themselves going mad. Other people find it interesting. They did it to relax. People who like typing anyway, who enjoy that kind of thing. People who were anxious found this a way to calm themselves. And other people, again, who saw it as a kind of a bridge between themselves and previous generations. So I think this is very interesting. I think this is something we might do in future with the audio collection as well, to allow people to transcribe that. And we're curious to see what will happen with that. So that's another way of engaging with the community. Another way is with PhD research. And we've had a few people dealing with the folklore collection, many people over the years, and a few people recently with us in DCU dealing with PhD research. So I'll let Aoife talk about her research, which is based very much in this material. Aoife, go ahead.
Thanks a million, Una. Thank you so much for the invitation to speak today. So for my portion of this, I'll talk about for about maybe 12, 13 minutes. I just want to give you a snapshot into the PhD research that I've been undertaking for the last 2 years. So I've been trawling through the physical archives, searching for any Irish language songs that are associated with the area of Northwest Donegal in Ireland. So the aim of the project isn't only to just find and categorize the songs within the archives, but to also suggest the best platform for their digital representation and accessibility. And this will all tie in with the local community in Northwest Donegal. So I have a small geography lesson here. You can see from this map, there are 32 counties on the island of Ireland, and 6 of them marked here in yellow. They make up Northern Ireland, which is actually part of the UK. And then the rest of the counties, green and purple here, make up the Republic of Ireland. So as you can see, Donegal, which is purple here, is kind of like the Alaska of Ireland. It is actually attached to the Republic there, but it is also sort of cut off. And it is very much the most northwestern part of the country, which, due to that sort of unique geographic location, it's managed to maintain lots of the traditions, the language and culture more densely than much of the rest of the island of Ireland. And the area itself is still a Gaelic-speaking area. That's not to say they don't have English, but Irish is their day-to-day language there. And there's very few places like that left in Ireland where the passing on of language and certain traditions has been left unbroken, which obviously means that this project can, even though the archive itself is fixed, the project is a living archive because we still have native practitioners that we can consult. And then, of course, the focus on one single area brings other major potential research benefits. The songs collected from the one area can highlight the language usage and the dialect, historical social norms and beliefs and customs, and many other anthropological, sociological, ethnomusicological, even just historical items. And it just gives us a chance to piece together society. So Una is acting as my secretary today. She's going to move us along here. So as you saw just there from Una's presentation, a huge amount of work has gone into the digitization of our National Folklore Collection, but there's still a vast amount. We've about 2/3 left of the main collection to digitize. So I've had to spend the last few years physically within the archives, searching for songs. And I'm going to take you through the current step-by-step process for somebody who wants to try to access a song, which I'm sure some of you have experienced in your own lives. The indexing system in the archives it's fairly comprehensive, but it's also quite awkward and prone to human error. It's handwritten. So you can choose to search by area, by collector, or by content type. And this involves going through tens of thousands of handwritten index cards that have been alphabetized. And you stand at a cabinet. You're not allowed to remove the cards. They have to stay in the order that they're in. So you stand at the cabinet and you flick through and you notate any documentation that might say that there's a volume in the archive that is referencing the area that you're studying. They actually had to buy me a special step because the drawers were too tall for me. So I had my own special place in the archives now. Once I'd kind of found those references, I could then go to an index book, the index books that Una was speaking of. Unfortunately, in my case, the index books marked song under the word filiocht, which actually means poetry. So all prayers, songs, poems, children's rhymes, games, anything that rhymed went under the word filiocht. So it meant once that I found a potential volume with filiocht in it, that I'd have to do a page-by-page search to see where the songs were. So if we move on to the next slide there. Brilliant. Now, we were very, very lucky in that the leaders of the Folklore Commission who were in charge of collecting had the foresight to know the extra value of the items that they collected and, the extra information that might be connected to the items they collected. So here we've got one of these slips would be attached to an item that had been collected. Sometimes it would be attached to the beginning of several items that were collected from the same person. And I know that not many of us here would have Gaelic, but they basically outline the county, the barony, which is a smaller portion of the county, and the actual parish, and the collector and the collector's address. Along with then information about the what was collected, from whom, their job, and where they received this song in this instance from. And there was also a brilliant amount of foresight by the Commission in that they employed full-time collectors who lived in the areas that they were collecting from and were native speakers, and a lot of them were practitioners of the folklore themselves. And this, of course, meant that they understood the customs, the dialects, and they could also put informants at ease and get maybe more sensitive songs and lore out of people that they wouldn't give up so freely. At one point I read something that said they were happy with a local person because you wouldn't know if it was just a tax collector who was knocking on your door. So it was a brilliant piece of foresight by them. And if we move on to the next slide there. So I have managed to collect, after 2 sweeps of the archives, I shouldn't say collect, find more, so I didn't do the collecting, 1,256 songs from this small region. And as Una just said there's been 1,700 songs already digitized, so there's a vast amount still left to go. And these songs are from 35 collectors and 205 informants. Now, a lot of these songs aren't individual songs and that they're repeated by informants, but there isn't one single version of any of the songs that is the same as another one. So here in front of us, we have 2 versions of the same song there, and so we have Molly Schleife. Now, these 2 versions of the song were collected by the same collector in the same town on the same visit, and you can see that they're different. In total, there's actually 6 verses in each of the 2 songs, and 3 individual verses, and then 3 verses that are almost identical. And if Una clicks twice there, we'll be able to see that the first verse of version 1 is almost identical to the second verse, should I say, of version 2. And I know that very few of us in this group here have Gaeilge, but even if we did, these would be actually quite difficult reads, because this collector tried to stay as true to the dialect as he could, meaning that he wrote down kind of semi-phonetically what he heard. So even within those two verses that are almost identical, he spelt the same words differently depending on whether he felt they were said more broadly or more slender, which is really quite interesting, but obviously leads to some difficulties with regards to transcription. And if we move on to the next slide there, we have here an example of a song from Tory Island, which is off the west coast of Donegal. So obviously it's really important for the searchability of the songs that they're transcribed, particularly because the use of the old Gaelic script has actually, it's gone out of usage now. So for the younger generations to be able to just access the songs by lyric. But it's a tricky process. There's literally only one OCR that can help with transcription. And I'm currently using it, but its capacity to read the Gaelic script depends on how well you train it. So it would need at least 50 pages of transcription, hand transcription by me, uploaded before it could read any individual's handwritings. So it means that unless somebody has really collected more than 75 pages, it's not worth my while using it. So that leaves me transcribing 30 out of the 35 collectors by hand. So, and it's not just the script that causes grief for OCRs. The OCRs don't really like the non-linear idea of song, basically how you don't know where you're going next in the sentence. And then of course we have sometimes perhaps a collector writing on the margins, correcting themselves. You can see here in front of us that there's lots of dots, flicks, accents and corrections in this tiny piece of writing. And so the OCR can have quite a tricky time, so can a human obviously have quite a tricky time of figuring out what is meant by all of these. The song itself is full of brilliant little tidbits. It reads, just in case you'd like to hear the language, an lá hu in crúbach gatori ni hongli shi fatal na fair na ni bruhi shi a vi shi le hokris a cui vil urhi gol shir near bade shaler in ilan gur friel shi rish gut sir more sterdini na gushkin shi turris gunglani shi simple gidor. So as somebody maybe cut a word to fit it, that's how this collector wrote it down. But the song itself tells us about a bull or a cow with crooked horns who was sold by a trader to somebody on Tory Island, who then slaughtered the poor cow for her skin and created a sail out of the skin. And the night that the sail was put on the boat, a magical wind came and blew her to all of these different places until she made it back to the trader to say, why did you sell me to this man? But the song, of course, then includes the culture of the trading fairs and where they were and who was trading, and then the use of the skin as the sail, and then the place names that were all visited as the cow was trying to make her way home. So they're very, very useful. So if we move on to the next slide, there's only two left. We currently don't actually have a definitive song index in Ireland for our traditional songs. There's been a couple of song projects done similar to my own, carried out within the archives, where researchers attempted to identify and classify songs from specific areas. But the largest of these was actually carried out in 1979, and then there was another in 2011. So before even the Dúchas project was on the radar. And these were published as index books. So they reference about 400 songs, but they don't even have the texts of the songs in them, just where to find them in the archive. And so they index them by song type and title, the first line of the song, the informant, the collector, and the archive location. So you can flick through the book, find the archive location by informant, for example, and then go to the archives physically and find it. And maybe now on Dúchas find it also. However, of course, if it was a digital song index, we could remove all those boundaries of space and time, and it could contain so much more than a physical book. So it could be searched by all those previous criteria, but we could also have searchable lyrics. We could have a search by area map. We could have linked biographies. We actually have a project here in DCU called the Annam Project, which is basically digitizing biographies of the collectors and the informants here. And there's like there's many other ways that we would be able to collect, and we could even then, we wouldn't necessarily need to categorize them under one heading like it's done in the books, but they could be categorized by sub theme and subheading as well, which would be greatly useful, and even contemporary themes. So if you just move on to the last slide, of course I won't be able to do any of this without the help of the community in Northwest Donegal. So I'm moving on now that I have the songs sort of as an offering to the community. I'm moving on to the surveying and interviewing portion of the project. And it's here where I'll be drawing on the perspectives of the communities from which the songs were collected. I'm aiming not just to categorize the songs with respect to how the community feel they should be categorized, but also to find out what type of information they want represented and in which format. So the aim of the surveying portion is to just survey the wider community and find out their interest with regard to the materials. So will teachers want a platform for students to do school projects? Will people doing genealogical research want certain information on the informants or the collectors? Will bearers and seekers of the tradition want songs represented under a single heading or by sub-theme, or would they want it by references to place names, lyrics, titles, this kind of thing? And even just such a simple thing as whether they want it represented in Irish or bilingually will actually change how we present things. And then the interview portion will look at the best ways of categorizing the songs and look at potential reassimilation of the songs that have fallen out of the tradition. There's also, I suppose, a question over whether we need two types of indexing: one historical for the historical uses and functions of the songs, and perhaps one more contemporary for how the songs would be viewed by the community in today's climate. And that'll all be done by interviewing and by surveying the community. So that brings us to the last slide. And that's just a snapshot of the potential of the archives musically. And I'm hoping to create some kind of framework that we'll be able to use on the Dúchas platform that'll just make the songs available to everybody in the future. So thank you
very much.
Thank you very much, Una, and thank you, Aoife, for a very, very interesting presentation, and thank you for your work. It's very interesting how there is so many levels when you work with communities, and kind of when you work in a larger kind of scale, and then when you work with smaller communities, and you have kind of different answers, different questions, and different challenges. But it's also always very inspiring to hear of the examples. Thank you very much. So we will go on to the Washington State University. We have because of the time zones, we have a video recording. I will have Michael Wynne will be talking about the Mukurtu project, empowering communities to manage their digital cultural heritage. And Outi, if you can help me with the video.
Yeah, I will put it from my computer so you can wink me if the sound or something doesn't come up. And actually, when they are referring to the traditional knowledge labels in this video, we actually got the presentation from them in the previous webinar in our project. So you will find also more information from those there, but I will now put the video on.
Thank you for inviting me to speak with you today about Mukurtu CMS and its role in community management of intangible cultural heritage. My name is Michael Wynne, and I am joining you from the territories of the Lekwungen and Wasanic peoples of Victoria and Saanich, British Columbia in Canada. And I am the Digital Applications Librarian at Washington State University, whose Pullman campus is located on the homelands of the Namibu Nez Perce tribe and the Palouse people. We acknowledge their presence there since time immemorial and recognize their continuing connection to the land, to the water, and their ancestors. Today, we'll provide a short background on Mukurtu CMS and share a few examples of community-led sites and projects with a focus on work with traditional music. Mukurtu is a free and open source content management system and community access platform built with the specific needs of Indigenous communities in mind for curating, sharing, and managing digital cultural heritage materials. Our team at Washington State University develops and maintains the code and provides support, outreach, and training. I am fortunate to be our primary support specialist and a member of our development team. Mukurtu is used by Indigenous communities around the world as well as other groups. It gives communities a tool to decide how to make content available based on their own protocols for viewing and circulation. There are 5 core features that help set Mukurtu apart from other platforms in the cultural heritage management realm. First, we have flexible cultural protocols. These allow for granular access to the content of a Mukurtu site, whether that means cultural materials, language, photographs, or anything else. Protocols are really the core thing that Mukurtu provides. Next are extended community records for all types of material. This is the ability to provide multiple sets of metadata for any item and push back on the concept of a singular canonical record. We also have a set of tools we collectively call Roundtrip. These tools provide workflows for import and export of metadata and media to allow for digital return and exchange with other communities and institutions. We support traditional knowledge labels. The TK labels allow Indigenous communities to provide information about proper access and use of their materials. And finally, we provide several avenues for language learning and representation. Now, before I show the platform or examples, I want to talk briefly about where Mukurtu came from, so you can get an idea of the priorities and principles which shape not just the platform, but our commitment to its underlying philosophy. Or, put another way, I find that having some context of why Mukurtu works the way it does helps explain how it works and why it's used. Mukurtu grew out of collaborations that our director, Dr. Kim Kristen, worked on with the Warramungu Aboriginal community in Central Australia. That relationship began in 1995 when Dr. Kristen began working with a group of Warramungu women to help them record songs and stories about their homelands and traditions, with the express intent of passing these recordings on to their children and grandchildren. They recorded audio and video of the places they were raised, stories from their ancestors, songs about their countries, and the many languages they spoke. Some years later, these materials, along with other materials from scholars, missionaries, and teachers, started being returned to the community. In the course of working with those digital and digitized files, it quickly became evident that these digital materials needed to be managed in similar ways to physical materials, following community protocols for viewing, circulation, and attribution. This photo really illustrates those physical access protocols. This is a filing cabinet located at the Ninkanunu Art and Culture Center in Tennant Creek. You can clearly see that the access is restricted to men only, and permission is needed to access the contents. So the question was, how would they translate those face-to-face protocols into permissions and access of digital materials when they're removed from their physical context? Michael Jumpin Jones, an elder in the community, was working on this, and as the project developed, he chose Mukurtu as the name for the digital access platform he wanted to create. Mukurtu is a Warramungu word that could be translated as a dilly bag, a traditional place to keep cultural materials. The dilly bag then is a safekeeping place, and that was the starting point to create the first Mukurtu Wumparani Kari archive for the Warramungu, which launched in 2007, and was only accessible in person on the computer at Ninkanunu. Jumping ahead a couple of years, enough people were asking about using Mukurtu that the platform was expanded from a single unique offline tool to a more flexible web-based platform which has continued to grow. We have had the great privilege to work with many Indigenous, Native, and First Nations communities around the world as part of our community-driven development process. Their needs and feedback help guide development, refine our features, and drive our user support. Now I want to speak briefly about the structure of a Mukurtu site. Each Mukurtu site has 3 elements that provide the framework that we use to create, share, and describe content. These elements are communities, cultural protocols, and categories. Communities primarily represent the source, contribution, or stewardship of material on a site. A site can have as many communities as needed. For example, a site run internally by one community may only have a few Mukurtu communities if all the content is coming from their members. On the other end of the spectrum, a site can have many communities. A number of Australian sites we've worked with map families to Mukurtu communities, so we have sites with hundreds of communities. Cultural protocols are how individual users access specific content. They are the heart and soul of Mukurtu. They are what allows for the cultural values that exist offline to be embedded online. Each Mukurtu community defines their own set of protocols. Like communities, protocols are flexible, and some communities will have many, while others will only have a few. Some common protocols we often see across Indigenous communities worldwide are gender-based, seasonal, ceremonial or sacred, and community or tribal citizens only. Other common uses for protocols are more workflow-oriented, like staging, review, or staff use. And finally, if items are going to be shared publicly, public access or open protocols need to be created. Finally, categories define what is meaningful to users. They are a discovery tool to organize and define the materials within Mukurtu to help people search and browse. In the same way that each site has unique communities and protocols, it will also have unique categories. We don't default to existing controlled vocabulary since the scope of content and audience varies so much from site to site. The main content on most sites is what we call digital heritage items. Digital heritage items are at their core a combination of media and metadata. They move beyond the notion of one single canonical item or one record to allow for more context and relationships. And digital heritage items can be built around a wide range of media formats. Image, audio, video, and documents are all well supported. And the metadata schema is an extended Dublin core that we call Mukurtu core. Now I would like to share two projects with you. First is the Passamaquoddy people site. They foreground their connection to place, the ocean and lakes of what is the state of Maine in the northeastern US. Dwayne Thomas provides a welcome. One of their most prominent collections is the 1890 wax cylinder recordings made by Jesse Walter Fuchs. These are the earliest recordings of Native American voices. The cylinders are held at the American Folklore Center at the Library of Congress, and their staff worked with the Passamaquoddy to digitize and return the recordings, which included songs and stories, some of which had not been sung or told in decades or longer. First, they imported the original metadata from the American Folklore Center catalog, and then spent time with the recordings in community listening sessions. Here are a few seconds of one original recording after it had been substantially cleaned up. From there, they greatly expanded and corrected the metadata and information about these recordings, using the proper Passamaquoddy names of the songs, adding extensive narratives like you can see here, and incorporating traditional knowledge labels, to name a few changes. These corrections and expansions were also shared with the Library of Congress and were incorporated into their records with proper attribution. In this case, the American Folklore Center is an eager collaborator, updating their records, foregrounding the Passamaquoddy knowledge and implementing any access restrictions for sensitive items. The Passamaquoddy community has also provided new recordings of some of the songs, and many of them are being revived and taught to younger generations. Here are a few moments of Gracie Adams singing that same song recorded at a community event. So the other example I want to share with you comes from the Plateau People's Web Portal. This is a site collaboratively managed and curated by Washington State University and 8 tribal nations with whom we have memorandums of understanding. I want to highlight a set of materials created by the Yakima Nation Library. They worked with the Little Swans traditional dance group and audio from a 1947 collection of field recordings to create a traditional dance revival curriculum. As part of this effort, they produced an educational intentions video to accompany the curriculum. I'd like to share an excerpt from Mary Lee Jones in one of those videos.
Shikwi Inknashwaniksha Smanati. Good day, my name is Mary Lee Jones, and the dances that we have today, the social dances that we're sharing, I would like to first thank WSU for putting a lot of the the recordings together, for us within our community, it meant revival of some dances. We had bits and pieces like a jigsaw puzzle. And so having the portal, it helped us to be able to extend a lot of those teachings, to put our energy where we wanted to go in a positive place.
With all of that in mind, they worked with these historical recordings to renew and teach the songs and dances in their community. The original recordings are also available and connected within the site, as is a more extensive curriculum video and other information. I'd like to close this out with a short clip from the video of this swan dance. There's, of course, much more that is possible with Mukurtu CMS than I'm able to show today. If you are interested in learning more, I encourage you to explore our public documentation and resources and to reach out to our support email with any questions. Thank you very much for your time today.
So thank you, Michael Wynne, and it was a pleasure to have you here, even through this video. I think it was a very important presentation for us. We've had already talked about minority communities, and then now we have the indigenous approach, and I think this is something very essential for us to kind of understand that the archives where the music collections are very different, and the power structures and are very different in the collections. So, for example, what we have been working a lot in our archive, because we don't have this kind of history of or challenging history of the community that we have collected. So it is very, very helpful and fruitful to compare it to, for example, with the Samis, with the communities with long century-long oppression and so on, and what to take into account. And it makes very kind of visible when you see the box with men's only in the picture that this is, I think, somewhere that we are very deep inside. But we will go on one more presentation. So we have Audrey Wilson from Scottish Council of Archives, and we will be talking about gaps. Please, the floor is yours.
Audrey, you are on mute now, probably, if you can start. Yeah.
Great, sorry about that. Sorry about that. Yeah, I am just looking for my thing. Okay, and then I will go on to sharing my screen. I'm hoping it will work. I did send it as a backup to you, but I'm hoping that won't be necessary. Great. Okay. I'm just going to go from the beginning. From the beginning. Hooray. Can everyone see that? I'm looking at you, Outi, going, yeah, great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
Great. Okay, well, I want to say hello to everyone and thank you very much for the invitation to be part of this webinar. My name is Audrey Wilson and I am the Partnership and Engagement Manager at the Scottish Council and Archives. And I also had the pleasure of being the lead for the Community Archives and Heritage Group Scotland Network, which was established in 2020 as a branch of the wider UK and Ireland CAS network. My interest is in oral history, community engagement, and collaborative archival practice. And I'm particularly interested in how archives can support inclusion, well-being, and community agency, and how we can use storytelling as a tool for empowerment and preservation. So today's presentation is titled Filling the Gaps, Communities Identifying What's Missing from Their Archives. And I'll be sharing some insights from several projects that show how communities can take the lead in shaping what gets remembered, recorded, and shared. And I'm really looking forward to hearing the other speakers, which I've already heard because I'm last, and being part of this conversation, which puts communities at the heart of heritage. While much of my recent work has focused on oral history rather than music specifically, I am delighted to contribute today because I think the underlying principles and processes are so similar, particularly around working in partnership with communities. And when I was asked to present, the Scottish Council on Archives put a shout out on social media to see how many community archives are engaging with music and other cultural materials, and we received a great response. And what became clear very quickly is that community archives are rich and varied, and they don't just hold documents or photographs, but they have lots of other cultural materials as well. And today I'll be sharing some examples from a number of projects I've been involved with, including Voices, the community story, and Gaps in the Archive, and some of the work that I've done through Community Archives and Heritage Group Scotland Network. And all of this connects directly to the purpose of today's sort of webinar and the principles of the 2003 UNESCO Convention on the Safeguarding of Intangible Cultural Heritage. That convention highlights the importance of community participation, not just as contributors, but as decision makers and custodians. So the projects I'll share will demonstrate what looks like in practice and how we can support communities to decide what gets collected, how it is shared, and what stays private or protected. And ultimately, this work is about shifting power and making sure communities are not just represented in archives, but they shape them from the inside and out. And I just wanted to thought I might try hearing a little bit from Andal Glasso. They are a community archive based in Glasgow around recording the Romany traditions, which are mostly intangible. So just a little bit from them. So is that going to work? I don't think that's going to work. I don't think that's going to work. I'm going to just leave that one actually, Outi, because otherwise it's going I don't want to confuse matters. But if you are getting these slides, you can click on the link and I'm sure you will be taken to their YouTube channel. So what is missing? So gaps in this context refer to the voices and histories and experiences that have traditionally been excluded from institutional collections, often those of marginalised or unrepresented communities. But by recording the oral histories, we help preserve personal testimonies and unique cultural knowledge, and much of which have not been documented before. And why does this matter? Because when the archives only reflect sort of dominant narratives, we lose the richness of our collective memory. And filling these gaps ensures greater representation, promotes cultural continuity, and supports social justice by recognising and validating these stories. So the role of the communities. Communities are active participants in documentation. It's one of the core principles of the Gaps in the Archive project, recognising that archives are not neutral. They reflect decisions about what is recorded and what is left out. That's why community input isn't just welcomed, it is central. So Gaps in the Archives followed on from two other oral history projects called Voices, the Hebridean Story, and voices the community story. And I will talk a little bit more about them later. Participants were invited to identify what they felt was missing from their local archives, and this simple but powerful shift in approach changed the dynamic. It was no longer about institutions collecting from communities, it was about working with communities to reshape the record. And this is so important. It's too often communities are only invited to contribute after the decisions have already been made. And in Gaps in the Archive, that project, they were involved at every stage, from defining the gaps to capturing and curating the content. So that empowerment builds confidence and skills, but also trust. And it ensures that the resulting archive is more representative, more responsive, and more alive. I don't know if I'm not going to try that one, actually. I'll try another one later. But this, there is a recording here of Dean Campbell, and she's speaking Gaelic. And we've already sort of heard a lot of different languages today already. But it's part of the Voices, the Hebridean story. So moving on, I just wanted to spotlight a couple of those projects. And this one is Voices, the community story. It's a national initiative from the Scottish Council and Archives, and the project empowers communities to tell their stories about archival materials, oral history, and creative approaches. And it's rooted in co-production, inclusivity, and supporting authentic local storytelling. And the project developed along two key strands, each with a specific theme. The first was Voices, the Hebridean Story, a pilot project run over 6 weeks during COVID-19 pandemic, and it aimed to capture a snapshot of life in the Scottish Hebrides during this period of isolation and disruption. And that's where we heard, well, you didn't hear, but Dean was speaking about her experience. So community members shared reflections on resilience, about local identity and change. And they were recorded and they're now archived in the local authority archive up on the Isle of Lewis. It's called Tansglan, an island, and most people will speak in Gaelic there, although of course they will also speak English. The second strand is Voices, the community story, which focused on the theme of migration. And it gathered stories from people who had come to live in Scotland, and they included New Scots, third, second and third generation, and actually some people who from other parts of the UK were now living in Scotland. And the intention was to ensure that Scotland's community archive better reflects the wide diversity of experiences that make up modern Scottish life. And a vital part of this project's success was the establishment of a steering group made up of people from a range of backgrounds and expertise, including community heritage, oral history, equalities, education, and archiving. And so this diversity of skills brought about a balance with real understanding of both community needs and ethical storytelling practice. And you can explore the outcomes and listen to the stories on the Scottish Council and Archives website, where all the materials are shared openly for learning and hopefully inspiration. And then another spotlight on the gaps in the archives, and I've referred to that project already. So it was created to explore what is actually missing from Scotland's local archives, and crucially, to ask communities themselves to define those gaps. And through a series of oral history workshops in places like Glasgow, our biggest city, to small towns, Dunkeld and Perthshire, to even remote villages up in the Outer Hebrides and Shetland as well. The community members were able to reflect on those stories that had been left out and why they'd been left out. So we trained participants in how to conduct oral history interviews, in some cases for the very first time, and supported them to document their personal, local and cultural stories that have never been recorded before. And the project placed strong emphasis on local knowledge and oral traditions, particularly those passed down through lived experience. And to support this, we partnered with Dr. Alison Shand of the Oral History Society. Alison led dedicated training workshops where participants learned how to record, conduct and reflect on oral history interviews. And crucially, participants receive certificates of completion. And this was not just to recognise their time and effort, but it's a way of validating their role as a researcher, a knowledge holder, and a cultural contributor. And although the project is rooted in oral history, many of the groups also chose to include music as a key part of their community identity. We've heard from Andal Glasso. Well, you can hear from them later. I really do suggest you go into their YouTube channel. We will hear a little bit from a fiddle player at Dunkeld up in Perthshire as well. And these examples are really show you that when you invite communities to tell their stories on their terms, and they bring the richness of their culture with them, and it's not just their voices, but music, memory, and of course movement. So we have lots of dancing, and we've seen that earlier as well. And you can explore more from this project. Again, it's on our website, and you can actually look at the recordings as well. And just carrying on, just looking at a little bit about the Community Archive Heritage Group Scotland network. I do want to mention it because it's so important. It was set up in 2020, as I said before, and it really does connect community archives groups across Scotland. And its mission is to build a self-sustaining network rooted in collaboration, mutual support, and community empowerment. And what's especially important about the CAS Scotland network, it is officially a branch of the Community Archives Heritage Group UK and Ireland. It's a speciality group of the Archives and Record Association. And that affiliation is really important for two reasons. At first, it means Scotland is part of a wider network of over 1,800 community archive groups. So it can learn from and also contribute to activity and advocacy across the UK and Ireland. And secondly, and very practically, it also means that CAS Scotland has a budget. And this allows us to run training events, pay for travel, and also to do peer-to-peer networking opportunities as well in various parts of Scotland. And that kind of infrastructure is rare in community archive space, and it makes a huge difference in terms of sustainability and reach. The network is also committed to being inclusive and responsive and working to deliver outcomes that reflect the real needs of Scotland's diverse communities. And it works to support knowledge sharing and best practice, of course, and provides a platform to advocate for community archives as essential parts of Scotland's cultural landscape. That's really important as well. Moving on, I hope. Just a little bit about digital sharing in community archives. It does require thoughtful community-led decisions. Not everything should be online or open to the public. It's about respecting context, consent, and cultural sensitivity. And that's why projects we've built around community-driven decision-making around that. And an example of that is in Assynt Community Archive. It's in quite far northwest part of the Highlands, quite, dare I say, remote. Their digital collection is not available online, but people are welcome to come to Assynt, to their community hub, and access it there. This model gives the community full control, protects local knowledge, and respects their privacy. But many groups also work in partnership with institutions to ensure digital preservation of their collections. So, for example, we've got Spirit of Revolt in Glasgow, which documents radical grassroots history and activism. The community curates and manages the content, but the Glasgow City Archives actually are holding on to it and will make sure that it is kept up to date and will be digitally preserved. Another example is the National Library of Scotland, working with Our Story Scotland, a community archive that have been collecting the stories of the LGBTQ community in Scotland for over 20 years. That collection also includes music, and it also includes performances as well. But to support this kind of sustainable community-led digital practice, we created the Developing Your Digital Skills Digitization webinar series. It's an 8-part training program. It's built specifically for people without formal archival training, and it covers everything from digitizing documents and photos, how to catalogue digital collections, and how to plan for long-term sustainability and ethical sharing. The sessions were led by expert practitioners from across Scotland, and the recordings are all online if you go to our website. But most recently, we partnered with Our Heritage, Our Stories. It was led by the University of Glasgow as part of the AHRC funding programme, tanked towards a national collection. They were really about ensuring community collections are recognised as part of a future national digital collection. So we held a conference in March earlier this year called Connecting Communities, and it very much focused on digital sustainability. So whether it's local control, ethical sharing, or national collaborations, digital heritage must always be shaped with communities, not just about them. And just sort of moving on, nearly at the end of my talk now, is the challenges and the learnings. And across all of the projects that I've discussed, a few challenges have emerged, some practical, some ethical, and many ongoing. And one of the most persistent issues, of course, is funding. And many community archives rely on short-term project grants, perhaps for 1 year. And so we really do need longer-term investment in community heritage infrastructure if we're serious about inclusion and access. Another ongoing challenge is digital knowledge. So community archives are often led by older volunteers, people with deep knowledge of their local history and a strong sense of commitment, but they don't have the confidence or experience to manage digital files, metadata, or preservation systems. And at the same time, there's a real gap in youth engagement. And so many younger people do not really think about volunteering within the heritage sector at all. And so I think they are interested if they're introduced to it. So I think part of my role is to actually bring those generations together. And it's something we need to do very quickly and soon. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about the trust and participation, because I think they're really also key. So we've seen in the Voices, the community story, and Our Story Scotland, that building trust can take time, especially when stories are personal, sensitive, or involve trauma. In one case from the Voices project, a man seeking asylum chose to share his story, but only if it was closed for 30 years. He wanted it preserved. It was very important. He wanted it to be in the local authority archive and have a clear plan for its access in the future. So that kind of care, listening, documenting, and protecting builds long-term trust. And language can also be a barrier. So some of the participants' first language wasn't English. So we worked with translators and support workers to ensure they felt safe and informed throughout. Our Story Scotland, who record the oral histories of LGBTQ people in Scotland, ensure that interviews are only conducted by members of their community, because shared identity builds comfort and respect. And that's an important model for many types of inclusive oral history work. And finally, they are the practical challenges, the tools, the training, and the time. And that's why we launched Developing Your Digital Skills series, to meet people where they are, support volunteers, and give communities the confidence to digitize, preserve, and share their collections safely. The challenges are real, but when we address them with empathy, collaboration, and long-term thinking, the results are powerful and lasting. And just as I go on, reflections and takeaways. So just to close, I'd like to reflect on really, what does all of this mean? We've seen that archives are not just containers of the past, they're living, evolving spaces that grow with the people who engage with them. When communities are supported to tell their own stories, archives become places of inclusion, dialogue, creativity, and even healing. We've also learned the importance of meeting people where they are. Many individuals and communities have never engaged with archives, either because they've never heard of them or because they don't see themselves reflected in the traditional archive space. That's why raising awareness is such an important part of my work. This June, we hope to take part in the Scottish Refugee Festival, where we plan to collect oral histories from the festival attendees. It's an opportunity not just to support those people, but also to collect them, and they will be stored in the National Library of Scotland. Something I'd like to invite everyone to attend, if you possibly can, is the Communities Archive Heritage Group conference this year in June. Is going to be held in Huddersfield for the first time. It's a town with a long tradition of migrant and working class community activism. And it's a perfect setting for this year's theme, Making Connections, Community Archives, People and Place. And it very much is a theme that speaks about the UNESCO Convention of the Safeguarding of Intangible Culture. So really, the future of archives is around collaboration, being inclusive and community-led, and that's where the most meaningful work is already happening. And it's where we need to continue investing our time, our attention, and our resources. So you can keep in touch, see whatever we're doing. That's all the sort of links. It includes my email address at the bottom. And just finally, I just want to say thank you very much for inviting me here today. And if anyone has any questions, I'd be very happy to answer.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Audrey. And we will go on. I think we will take that. We have two commentaries, so we will take that. If we have time, then we can have the questions in the end. So if it's okay, if nobody has something very, very crucial for the moment, but I think we will go on. And yeah, once again, thank you. This was we will all come to your meeting, to your conference. We can make the promise now that we will see ourselves face to face. It would be very, very big pleasure also to understand how the community archive network works, and actually the idea of the community archive. I think it's not a very international kind of one size fits all system. At least in Finland, of course, we have this community archive activity, but I think it is quite different, and I think we would have very, very much to learn from your network and your realities, how it's fixed and so on. So I think the conference would be a dream come true. But we will go on. Next from Macedonia, Aleksandra Kuzman, you have promised to give us a commentary speech, and of course present also your archive and say some feelings, how the four presentations so far, what kind of ideas you have got, and maybe how you can reflect to your own work with your own archive and with your own institution. Very pleased to have you here, Aleksandra.
Hello to everyone. Do you hear me? Right?
Yes.
Okay. I heard very interesting presentations and interesting ideas for implementing in our work at the institute where I work. So first I want to start by thanking Matti and Outi for hosting this webinar and for the invitation. I said to you before, I watched some of your previous webinars on YouTube, and I found them to be very informative and helpful, just like this one. So it's great to be part of this. Thank you. As I can see, Finland is very, very, very active in the domain of intangible cultural heritage. and all the things related to it. As far as I am aware, Outi and Matti and Bengt, as I heard from you, are among those who really contribute to the ICH archive and archival materials in Finland, and I truly admire your work. It's great. I was writing something, and I will try to comment about presentations, and I will give some our examples from the Institute of Folklore, Marko Cepenkov, in Skopje, where I work. Maybe I will start with the last presentation. I want to say that filling the gaps in the archives, in the archive materials, is very useful for any archive. But this is a very interesting subsequent step once communication between the archive and community has been established. At our institute, we are making a baby steps toward digitization process and accessibility to the people, to other people. Audrey spoke about from a broader scope, a broader point of view, of what is the meaning of gaps, but I will mention something else. There was a case when a researcher failed to complete his transcription of an Aoife song. When I researched the manuscript melograms from our archive, and he failed to complete his transcription because he was unfamiliar with the dialect of the Ohrid city. The song's textual body contained blank gaps. So I speak about the gaps in the more, not a broader point of view. This shows how it's crucial to understand the dialect, the situation, cultural context, background of the area we are studying, researching, because it may happen to make a mistake. When this occurs, a lot of gaps can be filled with community assistance, and this is demonstrating the openness of the archive for collaboration. As Audrey said, that collaboration is with community is the future between archive and communities. And it's a great project for making that communication. So for the third presentation, which was pre-recorded, I must say that for the Mukurtu traditional knowledge labels, I heard on your previous webinar held on 10th of April 2024 by Maui Hudson. I think it's the correct pronounce. It was a completely new topic for me, and I must say the interesting thing that is when we speak about the traditional knowledge labels, we don't mean intellectual properties rights, but we speak about the cultural rights. It was very interesting for me. And another thing, labels can only be applied by the communities, and notices can be applied by the institutions and researchers. I think this is very interesting idea that we can appropriate it and probably try to adapt as on our archive materials, but I think that we will need plenty of help from somebody who is skilled with this topic. Anyway, thank you for very informative and interesting ideas that I heard in this webinar and in the previous one. For the, I think, second presentation, the important questions of when we speak about some archival materials, if those materials are digitized and are accessible to other people. I am related to the PhD enthusiasm and a great work of Aoife. I think the name was Aoife. My doctoral thesis related to the Chalgia music tradition in Macedonia was based on archival materials because there were not many alive older barriers of the cultural asset that I was researching started in 2016. There were only 2 Chalgia music groups who were from the older barriers. And my only solution was to approach our archive, and it was very helpful. But when I went to other cities' archives, I was a little disappointed because the employer said that there are some material, certain magnetic tapes, but nobody knows what is recorded on them. And when I offered some possible solutions with institutional collaboration, they were not so interested. And until now, the situation, as far as I know, is the same. I want to say that it is very important for everybody to be conscious about the meaning of those kinds of materials and try to save them. And I congratulate the PhD enthusiasm. It's very valuable for any archival collection. It's great work. Now, for the first presentation, I write some notes. My congratulations for the project. It's very interesting, and for me it was very noble when I heard that about the communication with the families of the Gypsy traveler community. How did you say? I think that it means a lot to some families to have recordings where they can hear their grandfather, grandmother, or other relatives. At our institute, we had some cases when some people came and asked to have access to the recordings of their relatives. One man knew that somebody made a record with his mother singing. One boy was interested about the recordings with his grandfather or grandmother. I cannot recall. But these are isolated cases, and this kind of project is absolutely useful, and it's another inspirational idea for our next steps toward promoting the cultural heritage through the archives and archival recordings. So I want to again, thank you, all of you, for the interesting presentations. And now I prepared some text. I will read it to you, and some PowerPoint presentation. Just a minute. Second, no, minute. Do you see? Okay.
Yes.
Something appeared here. So I want to. How can I move it from here? I will try.
Maybe from the X, just.
License. Why license now?
Maybe you can you, yeah.
Okay, I think I
Yeah.
okay, sorry. As I mentioned, I work as a senior research associate in the Department of Ethnomusicology and Ethnochorology at the Institute of Folklore Marko Cepenkov in Skopje, which is founded in 1950. My primary area of study is Macedonian Chalgia. It's an old urban traditional music that was mostly developed in Macedonian cities throughout the 19th and 20th centuries. Besides researching the theoretical aspects of this music cultural heritage, I also have the opportunity to be directly involved in practicing this kind of music through many performances with my band called Chalgia Sound System. Since many of the former barriers of the cultural asset are no longer alive, my research related to the Chalgia music required me to focus specifically on archives and archival materials they contain. The archival fund at the institution where I work contains a wealth of audio and video materials stored on various media, such as magnetic tapes, audio video cassettes, CDs, etc. There are audio materials recorded on approximately 4,000 magnetic tapes, which contain valuable data related to Macedonia's intangible cultural heritage. This material is, audio material is protected by the law, ex lege. The recordings include numerous accounts of Macedonian traditional customs, crafts, songs, stories, etc. These data were gathered during extensive field research, primarily by past researchers from the Institute and by external collaborators who were also engaged as collectors of folklore material. The field recordings were collected between 1952 and 2002, with some interviews recorded slightly later, but some of the tapes are currently missing or presumed lost. One of the most crucial steps toward keeping these valuable witnesses from our cultural past and history for future generations is that these materials must be preserved in a suitable digital format, as the original sound carriers are prone to damage, deterioration, or decay, which is a natural and inevitable process that demands protective measures. Motivated by my personal research needs related to Chalgia music, listening to the archival materials on the magnetic tapes, I became interested in digitizing them after realizing their importance, as well the possibility of losing those priceless materials because of the aging of the older sound carriers. Given the complexity and time-consuming nature of this process, a dedicated project for the digitization of archival materials is needed. I said before, we are making baby steps toward this topic. This would require a specialized team, including experts experienced in handling older recording equipment and audio carriers like magnetic tapes, as well as those with technical expertise in the transfer and digitization processes. Additionally, a software engineer would be needed to develop special program for meticulously record details such as the recorder, date and location of the recording, who is recording, and informant's background, such birth date, place of origin, as well as information about the type of recording material. Is that traditional songs, dances, stories, etc. Such a project would also require a secure storage solution for the vast amount of digital data generated from the entire archive of magnetic tapes. Funding for this endeavor would likely exceed the capabilities of national, cultural, or educational ministries, and it would be best to find some other solutions. However, as we await the necessary resources, the tape continued to degrade, making it essential to accelerate the digitization process to preserve these valuable materials. With the help of some employers and a lot of enthusiasm in the Institute of Folklore has so far started the digitization process. Two co-workers who are currently working in the Institute's archive began digitizing some paper documents, such as photographs, deciphered materials, sheets, table of contents, and other paper material by entering a lot of data for the entire archival material, which is a complicated and time-consuming process that calls for a lot of focus and dedication. Regarding my attempts to start the digitization process, the guidance provided of a certain electrical engineer, computer scientist, and musician, Dorian Jovanovic, who has many years of studio experience and is always up to date on the technical requirements needed for recording and transcription process, was very helpful in migrating the recordings into more suitable formats. The appropriate storage of the migrated data was the subject of subsequent steps in the process. The transferred materials are stored on hard drives while the digitization process proceeds, and a data entry program is being developed with the majority of data entered. From July 2016 until June 2024, about 1,000 tapes have been transferred, which is roughly 1/4 of the entire fieldwork collection. Each tape is labeled with a unique number, and additional details are noted, such as whether it's the first or the second side of the tape, the date of the recording, and the recording location. So, in addition to properly maintaining the physical form of older audio carriers like magnetic tapes to prevent their degradation, one of the most important steps in preserving the intangible cultural heritage contained in those tapes is digitizing them into a suitable digital format, storing them properly, sometimes regulating their functionality, and providing individuals and organizations some sort of access to those materials without compromising the archival content itself. In the Institute, the procedure for accessibility is formalized as following. A request for use of archival material must be submitted by any outside party who needs access to the archived materials. After submitting, they must sign a statement of responsibility declaring that they will treat the material with care and full moral, material, and legal responsibility in accordance with the law on archival material and the law on copyright and related rights. They shall undertake not to misuse, misappropriate, or misrepresent the archival content, and shall credit the Institute of Folklore when using or citing the archival materials. After that, the requesters receive official approval for access the archives materials after signing this statement. So one of the most significant dilemma for us is related to the fear of misuse of materials and the question whether these documents, the declaration of responsibility and the approval for access, are sufficient to raise awareness of the value of archival material and to increase respect for it. Some confusion may arise when certain archive material, which was in a certain institution, becomes a private archive, for which the owner decides which part of that material he will make it public. In this case, it is indeed a good thing that the material is protected in some way, but it may be interpreted as a lack of awareness of the fact that those appropriated materials are part of the Macedonian cultural heritage and should be accessible to all interested parties. This and many other questions arise related to this complex subject, and these dilemmas have prompted further work to revise and amend the existing set of rules for storage, preservation, and use of archival materials in our institute, which is still ongoing process. So if you have some suggestion and comments about these dilemmas, I will be grateful. So I'd like to thank you for all providing valuable information on archives and the role of the communities in the treatment of that archival materials. And thank you for listening to our concerns about this subject.
Thank you, Aleksandra. Thank you very much. It was very, very nice that you were here and shared us your thoughts and ideas. And very much thank you for your great work that you do in Macedonia with your organization and with your colleagues. We are running a little bit out of time. We will have one more commentary. We will do so that we will not have the discussion in the end. So please write your questions to all the speakers or anyone in the chat. So, and please, the speakers, if you can follow the chat, if there is a question for you, then maybe we can, or you can continue it with email. I think we will do like that, but we don't want that, Lena, you hurry with your ideas, because you will now give us your insights about the convention, especially, I think, and how you feel from the convention's side about what kind of ideas and what kind of reflections these presentations make in your mind. Please, Len.
Thank you, Matti. I don't mind. This is how it is when you have a lot of interesting people discussing important issues. But I think I will stick more into the UNESCO Convention now, and will not go through the individual presentation, but just to say thank you for the invitation, and thank you everyone for these really wonderful and interesting, insightful presentations. Me and Matti, we have been often talking about what's the role of museums and archives, and we have often also been wondering that we don't know enough of this topic. And congratulations, Matti, Outi, and the team. I think you have really this time nailed it, and really good and interesting, thorough presentations. But so my position is that I work as a senior advisor in the Finnish Heritage Agency, and I've been coordinating the UNESCO 2003 convention since 2014. And I also am located in the museum development unit, where we have a small team of international experts. We all work with UNESCO and Council of Europe conventions, and also European Commission, but this is where I come from. But just to remind you that we are working with the UNESCO 2003 convention, and it is amazing that we are now 184 state parties. So warm welcome, UK, joining us really recently last year. But in addition to these state parties, it's now over 200 accredited NGOs playing an advisory role for the convention, and Finnish folk music being one of them. Communities are in the heart of the convention, and I think this is what makes it so special to work with the 2003 convention. we often speak about inventorying, or then even the elements on the UNESCO lists of intangible heritage. But this slide may be just to remind you that the inscriptions to UNESCO, they are just the top of the iceberg. So it's really a wide convention touching upon many issues around safeguarding of intangible cultural heritage. And though communities are in the heart of it, it's in many cases that it is the state, the municipalities, the public institutions that are there to support with the safeguarding or raising awareness. And I think your examples today have really showed what it can mean in practice. I also wanted to come back to the term definition of safeguarding. So in the heart of it is ensuring the viability of intangible cultural heritage. So all the measures we do are there so that these heritages, these living traditions, if they are to live, they would live in 50 or 100 or even 200 years. So this is the role that I think also the museums and the archives play. But as you see there with the list of documenting, researching, preserving, promoting, enhancing, supporting transmission. So it is very many kind of ways that these institutions can support that work. One of the important conventions, definitions or concepts in the convention indeed are communities, groups, and individuals, often referred as CGIs. So it is a very broad concept. So it's those who participate in the practice or transmission of the ICH element and consider it to be part of their cultural heritage. They have some kind of ownership around that heritage. Or it is those who create, recreate, maintain, and transmit ICH. And I often bring up this image from the capacity building materials of UNESCO Living Heritage Entity, that we might have that core, like practitioners and groups associated with a certain ICH. So in terms of the Sami people, for example, it is the Sami people, and it is particularly those who practice the crafts or practice the yoik singing or practice the reindeer herding. So practitioners of that heritage. And then on the next one, on the brown level, it's those identified communities or those associated with this identified ICH. So maybe here we can think of the Sami community in general. But then on the outer rim, there is even the general public. Well, in the Sami example, this doesn't maybe apply so well. But for example, if we take some marine tradition, I'm quite familiar with Nordic clinker boat tradition. So there, for example, it is even those people that just love the boats and they love to go to the events and they have a strong relationship with this tradition. So just to remind you that it is a can be a very wide circle. But of course, when we speak of minorities, then we need to be more cautious on who is to be called to be the practitioner of this heritage. Remind you of this fantastic project if you did not run into it between 2017 and 2020. So ICHandmuseums.eu, so they still have the wonderful website of the project, which is filled with great materials, comprehensive toolkit on tools, videos, discussion cards, as you see up there, the example from France, and then the publications, museums, and intangible heritage. So all of this is still available there. And though it is about museums, I think there is also many kind of thoughts that can also support archives. One picture that I took there was the notion of participation and the ways we interact with the communities. So how do we do that? So is it about hosting or opening our doors, making a pop-up exhibition? How can they contribute, providing ideas and suggestions to the museum? Can it be a collaboration that we embark upon an active partnership, or even co-creating where those communities and the museum/archive decide together and have an equal stake? Here, lastly, I took up some, not answers, but questions, but how can we identify the elements of living heritage and their significance to the people? How can we support the transmission of living heritage elements to future generation? Because I really think that all those examples we heard from you, they are also in supporting this process. How can we raise awareness about living heritage or intangible cultural heritage? How to strengthen collaboration? And then if we go deeper, how is intangible heritage reflected in our strategy? Is it already visible in our collection policy? Can we open our collections and research more for community use? And what kind of projects relate to intangible heritage could we together with the communities initiated? And just on my last slide, just to be a bit selfish here, to mention about the Wiki inventory for living heritage, which we've been working on since 2016. At the moment, we have 250 articles from over 400 communities around the country in 6 languages. So for us, this has really been the way on how to be in contact with the communities and give the voice to them, all those communities, even children. We have articles about living heritage by children in our inventory. So do check out Wiki inventory for living heritage. You can find the link just by Googling this name. But just lastly to mention that these national inventories, they are part of the work that all these 184 countries do in relation to the convention. And I think that museums and archives can support the process of national inventory in many ways. So this is also a call for partnership if you're not yet in touch with my colleagues in your country. So this is a call to cooperate more. Thank you.
Thank you, Lena. Thank you so much. So we already had from the comments from the chat that the word community is always something that we have we can spend days and days to talk about, and it's very always good to hear.
Can I ask Matti?
Please, Esbjörn.
So something that, as a Swedish person who's now been in the UK for 15 years, and you realize that the word community is used a lot in English, and I didn't realize until I came here that Swedish doesn't have a word for community. I don't know if Finnish has a word for community, but it creates a situation where I now find it very hard to talk about the kind of work I do in Swedish, because you have to be so much more specific. It doesn't mean that we can't be very unspecific in Swedish, as you probably know, but it's very easy to hide behind the word community and avoid the actual harsh truth that maybe we are not talking to community. Maybe we are talking to a few very loud people who are really, really passionate about a certain thing.
Thank you very much. Yeah, this is I think the main kind of the thing that we're working with, to understand what the community really means and all the sides that it has, and to understand that this kind of the heritage work is always political, and when the community work is then the community as itself, it works with the political kind of fields as human life itself, but this is, I think, also why this is so interesting and important. But I think we will be stopping now. There is we will be having another. Oh, Thomas, did you have
Yeah, well,
Yeah, quick one. Yeah.
in Swedish and in Norwegian, we have the word lag. That means someone, we have a football lag, we have a spelmans lag, we have different ways to create some kind of community by using the word lag.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
och samfund. Another good.
Mhm. Actually, I was in a training, like a UNESCO training, a few years ago, where it began. It was an international, a bunch of people, like 20, 30 people, and we were from different countries, and everybody was explaining the word community in their own language, and the answers were very, very different. So that kind of it's very good, important to take into consideration when you work with UNESCO, when you work with the word community and so on.
Yeah.
But so autumn we will have kind of the final webinar when we conclude all the 3 webinars and all the 3 levels that we have been working on. And please, the newsletter is in the chat, so you can sign, and you will find the info of the webinar also from the newsletter. But I think I will close here. Thank you, Outi, and thank you, Bengt, and thank you all the speakers and the commentators. It was very, very lovely afternoon, and I think we have a lot of things to tease our brains in the evening and in the night. So thank you very much. Goodbye.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
No.
Okay.